There. Did you get my email? Fine. Saying that it's okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
I'll get you the link and the slides in the next 24 hours. Cool. I don't have the link yet, so.
How long around is it gonna run?
Maybe in an hour.
Okay.
But the composting slide's like the second slide, so if you wanted to just.
Oh, no, we scheduled our meeting to go over the recycling thing for 5 o'clock, so I was like,
Yeah.
maybe we should move that. We could go for an
Yeah,
hour.
you can always, like,
Okay, cool.
but yeah, thanks for willing to do that.
You don't want to sit by me this time, Joe?
What's that? I always like to sit by you, but I have to sit here because I need to be connected. So normally I would be going out of my way to sit by you, but today I need to. Technology is more important than you, so. I need to be near the technology today. Try getting really fancy here.
So Joel, does you work for the school as well? Rebecca was saying, Joel.
My wife works for Guidehouse, what's called Navigant. She's she also an energy engineer. She does more consulting work
Okay,
and primarily for the utility like energy efficiency rebate programs.
okay.
So something like you get $1,000 to put in a heat pump in your house and like what's the effectiveness of that and how to get that out. So this year she's been asked with one other person from a company for Guidehouse to design and implement the program that takes the federal IRA money and distributes it to the state energy offices, which is huge. She told me that the first time I was like, it didn't register. Wait, tell me that again. I'm like,
So, yeah. So when she
I saw something.
was engaging.
Okay,
State.
but I was like,
it's the federal government, she's working for the federal government to produce a program that sends the money to the state program, to the state offices. And then there
Distributes from the state offices to individual entities.
from the federal to the state,
Okay, she's just doing federal to state.
federal to the state.
And then is there another advisor? who's
And then,
going
so part of that, like, she's still developing it, but what I
No.
understand is she would also put in metrics to say like,
Yeah.
in your state, this is the best way to do it.
Hey, Janae, can you hear us?
Help set it up.
Got it.
Janae, can you hear us? I wanna make sure our sound system
What
works.
is she
Can you not hear us?
When is she
I
thinking
can
about
hear
this?
you. Can you hear me?
She's gonna be
I
working on
can't
this
hear
from
you.
through December. She said it was gonna be basically starting March, but the whole year. Yeah.
Okay, well, never mind.
I wanna make sure we can hear.
Can you do Ohio first?
I was like.
And then send me all the contact information.
Can I get you guys can I get you guys just to be quiet for a second? I'm doing a sound check here. Janae, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Hi, John.
Okay, we can hear you too. We're good. This is great. You don't, I'm gonna I'll switch cameras and show you the class in a little while, but people are coming in. But yeah, okay, just wanted to make sure we were good on that. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and Phil is joining as well.
Great.
Sorry.
So you guys do mark yourselves as present. Person or two missing. I know Cindy is not going to be here today. Who else is not here? All right, well, we'll go ahead and get ourselves started here. I want to express a great deal of gratitude. Phil's not with us yet, but he'll come in when he comes in. I want to express a great deal of gratitude for our guests today, who are coming to help us get our heads more wrapped around the Sustainable Infrastructure Project and the kind of educational opportunities, the learning opportunities associated with that particular project. So I'm not gonna try to give everyone's titles, but Heather's our sustainability coordinator for Oberlin College. I think of Michael Ahern as kind of like the sort of person at the highest level of Evergreen Energy, which is the company we've been working with for, geez, maybe a decade.
7 years.
Yeah, it's been a long time and it's been good. And I wouldn't say that actually about almost any other company that we worked with at Oberlin College. And I'm a hard ass, as people will tell you. So the fact that I still think these guys are pretty awesome says a lot about how they've worked with us as an institution and how they've really sort of grasped sort of the ethos of Oberlin College and tried to make an engineering project really consistent with kind of the values of this institution. And I think in some ways even pushed us a little bit in really positive ways in terms of thinking about opportunities for community engagement. For instance, I've just been really pleased about working with them as partners on this project because I think they really get that this is an engineering project we're involved in, but it's a lot more than that. And I think there are very few engineers who would get that. So, and Michael's been sort of at the highest level involved with that project. We also have Janae Bott here, who I'm going to get her title wrong, but she's kind of, I think of her as sort of the communications person for Evergreen, the marketing communications. I'm not getting the title quite right, but what is the official title, Janae?
Well, my official title is Director of Marketing and Public Relations, but that's not really what I think of my job as being. It really is communications focused, and I love doing engagement, especially with students. So.
Right, so Janae's really been the point person in previous incarnations of this class when we were sort of like just beginning to develop ideas about how we might realize more of the educational potential associated with this project. And Philip Bourne, who just arrived here, I think of as being at sort of the upper echelon in terms of nuts and bolts management of this project. When something's not working, at least in terms of metering, I know he's someone who I instantly engage with, and he spent a lot of time with me and Joel on the phone this last week trying to sort out some problems we were having with metering in Dascom.
Hey, everybody.
And Joel Batens, who some of you probably know from various contexts, also works in our Office of Environmental Sustainability. He's probably the most directly dashboardy of the group here in the sense that he does have significant responsibility for the metering that's installed on this campus. He works for Oberlin College, not for Evergreen. I wanted to just, so you guys know who's in the audience here, I'm gonna actually, I didn't introduce Maddie, sorry. Maddie Faubert, who we've referred to as several times as sort of like, I don't know what we call her. Did we call her a co-pilot, or you're the co-pilot? She works for Community Hub, which does a lot of the display stuff. The work in Eastwood Elementary, those beautiful stories. Most of the graphic work was done by Maddie, so she joins us today as well because she needs to learn more about this SIP project and what's going on, because she'll be playing a role in developing stuff. But I did want to do just a quick go around for our folks online. So I'm gonna try to do something really fancy here, and it'll be a little bit shaky handheld camera. But I'm gonna have us quickly introduce ourselves as a class. This is a terrible. Here, I'm actually gonna stand over here. So I'm gonna turn around. Okay, so we just want major year, yeah, something like that.
Okay. Hi, my name's Peyton. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a third year and I'm an environmental studies and law and society double major.
Hi, my name is Martina. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a second year environmental studies.
Hi, I'm Bryn. I use she, they. I am my second year and I'm an environmental studies and econ major.
Hi, my name is Catherine. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a fourth year. I'm a double major in environmental studies and sociology.
Hey, I'm Pelia, she, her.
I'm an individual major and first.
I'm Dale, I use she, her. I'm a first year and undecided, but thinking about environmental studies.
I'm Holden, I use he, him, third year, I'm an environmental studies major, politics minor.
I'm Evie, I use she, her pronouns. I am a fourth year and history major.
I'm Rhea, I'm a first year, I use she, her, and thinking about.
Hi, my name is Marissa. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a figure class major.
She, her pronouns, I'm a second year environmental studies and art history major.
Hi, I'm Ethan, he, him, I'm the project manager for Environmental Dashboard.
Great. So I'm gonna switch my cameras back again now that you've been introduced to our student group. And I think I gave you guys a little bit of rundown on sort of this course. This course is called Environmental Communications, and we focus, it's a very project-based course. It's called the Practicum in Environmental Communications, because students in this class focus on developing various projects. And I guess I could have had people say a word about their projects, but maybe I'll do a quick summary. This semester, we're focused, one of the groups here is focused actually explicitly on the SIP project and sort of thinking in particular, the last group that focused on the SIP project focused on creating this series of stories that was very general about sort of like explaining the SIP resource flows through campus, beyond just the SIP, also water resources, electricity resources. This group I've charged with focusing more on thinking about data, and in particular, how can data visualizations associated with the data we have in this project be used to tell stories that are dynamic, that change over time, so that we visualize heat flows to dorms from the geothermal field, that kind of help people to understand how this system works and why it's important to understand how the system works. So there's a group focused on that. There's a group that's actually sort of similarly focused on the elementary school in Oberlin. As I think most of you know, Oberlin built a new green elementary school. They've got 80% solar, but we monitor the GZITs out of that particular building. It's actually, I'm suffering. It's very painful trying to deal with all the data we collected on that. We have 70 meters in the building, which wasn't the initial design, but we ended up doing it because the engineers involved in that project made a complete mess out of how they wired the building. And so we had to meter a lot more things so that we could sort out the mess they made. Yeah, it wasn't intentional. We have hand dryers metered in that building, which wasn't an intent in that building, but we had to do it to subtract them out from the circuit they weren't supposed to be on. At any rate, so that's a group. We have actually two groups focused on the schools. One of them is more focused on data visualization directly and how we can insert data visualizations into the story we've developed for that. The other group is more focused on, teaching in the classroom, helping kids to understand the meaning of graphs, mostly in K through 5. So that's an interesting and fun challenge there. We have a group focused on promoting the Eco-Olympics in the city in general. So as I think you guys may know, we're running an Eco-Olympic. I don't know what you've told these guys before, but Heather's sort of in charge of Eco-Olympics on campus, but we're also doing something in the community as we've done in years previously. Basically, these are electricity and water reduction competitions. We've often ran concurrent ones among dorms on campus, but also among the public schools. This year, we're adding in a new competition, which is going to be among four buildings in Oberlin that we have metered. The old elementary school Prospect, which is now a community center that has the recreation department, the sustainability office, and a couple other enterprises. They've got a senior center in there, and a sort of pre-K learning thing. And the fire station, which we have metered, the public library, which we have metered, and the school board, which we have metered. It's actually inside a school, but we separate out its electricity so we can meter it as a separate entity. Well, have I missed any groups here? I feel like I've missed one group. Oh, yes, NOACA. Yes, right. So we are also collaborating with the Northeast Ohio Area-Wide Coordinating Council, which is doing a regional level climate action plan, 5-county climate action plan. And we're working with them to develop more content for the community voices component of Environmental Dashboard that focuses on sort of regional initiative, people who are sort of people who are taking action within the region to address climate change. So that's a neat new collaboration. Anyway, that's all sort of background for you guys. Our charge during this first part of the class, when you guys are present, is to have a conversation with you about the kiosk display, about trying to educate the campus in a way that is engaging to them, fun, dynamic, that helps people understand the new systems we've installed on campus and why they are important to this campus. And I'm gonna relate a little story here at the start. And I'm gonna ask Michael if he remembers this, because I think he was the only other one present at this. And if for political reasons he wants to say, no, he has no memory of this, that's fine. So I have participated in a committee on campus that works together with the Board of Trustees at Oberlin called it used to be called the Climate Neutral Planning Committee, but now it's called the Sustainable Infrastructure Committee. And I recall several years ago, a meeting in which it was during a trustee meeting, the trustees were here on campus, and we met with them to talk about, whether or not what decision we were going to make. I think Michael was probably presenting a set of choices, which eventually narrowed down to the geothermal system that we're moving forward with, because it really was our only option, only viable option in the end. But I recall a trustee during this meeting coming in, and these are very powerful people, and saying at the meeting something to the effect that I understand that the geothermal system in this hotel is generating a significant fraction of the electricity we use in this. And thinking to myself in that moment, my God, do people have no idea what we're doing right now and how things work? And that seems, and it seemed really problematic to me that we had a situation where we were making major financial decisions about what to invest in, and people involved, people central in making those decisions, frankly, to be blunt about it, and here's where Michael can say he has no idea what I'm talking about, but people involved in making these decisions at the highest level had no understanding whatsoever of the technologies involved in this. And I put that anecdote up. Do you remember that or not? Okay, Michael does remember that. That's off the record, though. No one can repeat that, and I'm not saying who the trustee was. But that just, in my mind, really reinforces this notion that we've got major decisions to make to transfer from a society that's basically based on fossil fuels right now, an economy based on fossil fuels, to one that's based on renewable energy. And it is my premise that in a democratic society like ours, to the extent that it is democratic, people need to understand the decisions that they're making. And part of that means understanding the technologies, the choices, why things like heat pumps are like revolutionary in terms of their essential necessity for that transition moving forward. And so it is my contention that if we want this campus to gain all of the educational value and the knowledge value that's really necessary to sort of be ready for this transition, we've got to make maximal use of this system in terms of helping people understand it and helping people understand why what it does is critical to what we want to do in terms of our role in the larger world and helping the transformation. That's all a bit of a preface to our discussion today. We're going to start today with Michael talking a little bit about giving a little bit of a presentation. And I guess I need to open, I need to find that presentation quickly. It's one we did put on assignment today. Let's see. Yes, here we go. Oh, no, it's not the style guide. No, that's the wrong one. That was posted too. Let's see. Where is that one? It to me a bit earlier, so it's probably buried in here. Oh, here we go. Great. Okay. So the way things are gonna roll, is there a presentation mode for?
I sent it as a PDF. I don't know if you.
It doesn't have animations in it, so it
No,
probably doesn't
no,
make
it's
any
okay.
difference. I
Yeah.
can just make it full screen and it'll be just fine. So this is gonna be mostly discussion today, and I know from reading the comments you made on the readings assigned for today that you guys are doing some great thinking on this. So our goal today is just basically, Michael's gonna talk a little bit about the system, give us a little bit more background on it. And then we're gonna kind of open things up to discussion. Oh, I need to share my screen with these people. Let me just, I never really got used to hybrid, the whole hybrid thing. It confuses the bejesus out of me. It just does. So we'll see if I pull it off. If you guys aren't seeing things or aren't hearing things who are remote, just let me know and straighten me out.
Looks great, John. You're doing wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Oh, didn't pay him a cent to say that either. All right, so Michael, I think you're on board. And if you want to say a little bit more about yourself and stuff, I didn't give much of an introduction, so.
Yeah, I'm not that important. So you can go to slide 2, please.
Okay.
So really, I'm just gonna do a quick introduction to the Sustainable Infrastructure Program. A lot of you probably have heard some about it already, so we'll get through this quickly so we can get into the Q&A. But really, back in 2016, when we first engaged with the college, we were initially focused on achieving carbon neutrality by 2025. And that was the fundamental reason for initiating this overall program. When we originally met with that committee that John was referring to, actually upstairs on the second floor here, they set some very strict guidelines that beyond achieving carbon neutrality, 2 fundamental aspects of this, we need to make sure we're doing so in a manner that fits the mission of the college. So clearly the mission is toward education and learning, and when we've been defining our program, when we've been planning our program, it's always been about how we can integrate with college classes, with the student body, with faculty, with staff, in a more meaningful way than just technical. The second aspect of one of the charges that we had when we were asked to look at carbon neutrality was making sure we do so in a fiscally responsible manner. So that's what you see here as part of just that overall commitment. Carbon neutrality obviously is the critical mission here, but also doing so with some other guiding principles that are very important for the college. Go to the next slide, please. So in 2014, which is the baseline that we're measuring against, you can see that the emission profile of the campus was significantly different than it even was today. And I mean, it's been 9 years, a lot has changed. The college went away from burning coal back in 2014. The city actually has implemented very positive strategic benefits for the electric grid. So the electric grid in Oberlin now is essentially carbon neutral. Most of the electricity that is brought to the city of Oberlin from the municipal utility is from hydro and from methane, landfill gas combustion. And the city has made some significant commitments to maintaining a carbon neutral grid, which for the college really set us up to have geothermal being the right solution, as compared to a number of other colleges we're working with right now. In fact, even in South Central Ohio, Kenyon College, Denison University, they both have initiatives to get to carbon neutrality, but their grid is very dirty as compared to the city of Oberlin's grid. So that's an added challenge that we're facing with those 2 institutions to get them to carbon neutrality. We had this platform here in the city of Oberlin with a carbon-free grid, electric grid, which really enables us to just tackle how to eliminate the combustion of natural gas on campus. Slide, please. As we started to whittle in on our plans and our proposed solutions for getting to carbon neutrality, the college came to us with a number of other challenges that they wanted us to address. And ultimately, that's when we morphed from a carbon neutrality program to the sustainable infrastructure program. We really needed to start looking at all infrastructure on campus, the electrical, the chilled water systems, fire protection, controls, metering, all aspects of how utilities serve the campus. So that's why we morphed into the sustainable infrastructure program. And if you think about and you've seen out on campus, all of the work that's happening inside individual buildings, all of the trenching that I'm sure challenges you as you're trying to get from point A to point B sometimes. We only want to do that once, right? So if we're digging in the ground once, let's address all utility infrastructure, not just the elimination of carbon, of gas emissions. So there was more of a call to action of, while we implement the carbon-free solution, let's make sure we address all of the failures that we're currently experiencing on campus. Some of you who have been here a few years may have remembered outside Warner a couple of winters ago, there was an unplanned steam leak. So in the middle of the winter, we had buildings that had to get shut down because that pipe blew a hole in it, and steam coming out of the ground, and emergency crews coming in to fix it. Obviously not the most cost effective or best thing to be doing in the middle of January, rather than doing it when it's planned. So we are, as the overall SIP Sustainable Infrastructure Program, we're expanding cooling. So we're adding cooling in a number of buildings on campus. We're essentially doubling the amount of beds on campus that we'll have, or number of rooms on campus that will have cooling in them. We're replacing fiber infrastructure for better communication throughout campus. We're adding the ability to expand fire protection systems in buildings that might not necessarily have them today. Upgrading electrical infrastructure, just all kinds of advancements for the campus to have a much more comfortable, reliable comfort and safety and protection inside these individual buildings by the time we're all done with this program. And then, as always, doing so in a manner that is fiscally responsible for the college. So doing so, when we analyzed all the different opportunities, we always wanted to make sure that what we were doing long-term was going to be more cost-effective than if the college just continued doing what it was doing today. And we were able to show that. Go to the next slide, please. So as you all know, we selected geothermal as our solution. Geothermal, fundamentally, we have got a constant 55-degree temperature in the ground. And we're leveraging that 55-degree temperature to, as well as heat pumps in the central heating plant, to be able to simultaneously send 130-degree hot water and 42-degree chilled water out to buildings. And that the heat pumps use the carbon-free electricity to be able to generate both heating and cooling at the same time. And then that is giving you the comfort in your individual buildings. It also gives you domestic hot water for your showers and your sinks and dorm rooms, and also maintains the right level of temperature, the right level of humidity inside individual buildings, which is very important, of course, for, say, in the conservatory or in the science center. And Joel and Phil can get into the details of and the wonkiness of the technology a little bit more, but generally speaking, we're leveraging that stable temperature in the ground as a means of being able, and then the advanced heat pump technology as a means to keep all of the spaces comfortable across campus. The program is planned as a 4-year program. We're just starting year 3 of the 4-year program. Year 1 in 2021, we got our distribution system down to South Campus, all the way down to Lord Saunders. Phase 2, shown in the aqua green, we got from the central plant up to Union Street, Union Goldsmith. Year 3, we're going to be wrapping around, shown in the darker green, wrapping around on Professor and connecting down at the southwest corner of the Science Center. And then year 4, shown in the yellow, we are going over to East Campus, over to the Art Museum. And so by the end of next year, by the end of 2024, we will have converted all of the campus buildings that are connected to the new geothermal-based system, as well as we will have made all the modifications that we need to make in the central energy facility, adding the heat pumps. Last year, we also installed our pipes that go up to the new geothermal wells field that's gonna start to be constructed here in a couple of months. And over the next 18 months, we will, starting in about mid-April, we will be drilling the geothermal wells. And those will be done mid to late 2024. So that at the beginning of the 24-25 academic school year, we should have all of those buildings on the new heating and cooling, geothermal based heating and cooling.
And in case it wasn't clear from what Michael said, that's the gray area up there is where the geothermal, this is on the north property.
Yeah, it's the very north intramural practice fields. just east of where the solar array is. So the very north edge of campus. So for a couple of years those practice fields will be closed for the drilling. But when they're restored, we'll have some kind of placard, some type of signage up there off on the side, but otherwise you wouldn't even know that you'd be practicing on top of geothermal well field, and they'll be restored to their current condition so that they can be used again.
By the way, the geothermal well field for this building is underneath our garden out there, so you just don't, it doesn't make any difference.
And the college is working on alternative practice fields, obviously, to make sure that students still have the recreational availability. Go to the next slide, please. And then back to an earlier point, making sure that we're doing the full implementation, the planning and implementation of this in a manner that's consistent with the mission of the college itself. Doing these types of discussions. We have interns. Martina is an intern on our team for helping us get communication materials out to the student body and to staff. Hosting tours on an ongoing basis. We're working with the geology department to have them integrated with the well drilling and ongoing monitoring of the well field. We're always looking for opportunities to have this become more of a true overall campus and college program that's integrated with everything else happening on campus. And we're consistently looking for opportunities to bring this well field and benefit out into the broader community. We're working with the hospital right now and working on connecting the hospital to this geothermal based system. You see the pipes running right past the hospital. There's a really good opportunity for us to do that. First Church is currently connected to our the energy system, and we'd like to have them connected to the new geothermal based system. They want to as well to reduce their emissions. We've worked with the school district to make their buildings compatible with our system, so that when the right opportunity presents itself, we can connect the new schools. We've been working with the city to try to get down South Main Street to connect City Hall and the library and the police station and a few other buildings to our system as well. So consistently looking for this to become more than just a college solution, but rather a community solution. And then you see some of the a statistic that we're really proud of. 87% of the materials that we're pulling out of the buildings when we're renovating them are being recycled, which is something that we're really proud of. And we're constantly looking at greater opportunities. We have women business and small business and minority-owned business goals for our contractor. We have workforce participation goals that our contractors are committed to fulfilling, just to continue to expand on what is the mission of the college.
When you say recycle, do you mean like not landfill, or are they being reused?
Reused.
Okay.
Last slide, please. And then again, just achieving the benefits, achieving the mission of the institution, beyond just, the first and the best way to decarbonize is to reduce what you use, right? The less you use, the better off you are. And by way of all the controls improvements and just interior infrastructure improvements that we're making in the campus buildings, we're expecting our overall campus energy usage to be reduced by roughly 30% when this is all complete, which is great. Beyond just saying we're going to decarbonize, let's just use less. That's the best way to move forward first. But also then once we've reduced our usage, we're going to achieve that goal of serving that usage with carbon-free solution. We also, in the process, are reducing our water consumption on campus by roughly 5 million gallons per year and reducing our sewer discharge by about 4 million gallons. And then still bringing operational savings to the campus, which was one of those initial fundamental goals. So just working smarter, working more efficiently, ultimately makes us the right program and fulfills the environmental goals as well as the financial goals of the college. That's all I have.
That's great. So I didn't, this next part, I'm gonna stop sharing the screen. So that we can see our other members a little bigger on the screen here. This is going to be a bit freeform, but what I asked is that each of our guests say a little bit about, you know, kind of their role, but also their sort of vision for enhancing the educational value of this. And so I don't care what order we go in. Is there someone who wants to go first among the group? It looks like Joel
I'll get
wants
out
to
there.
go first.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to share for you, and thank you, Michael. I want to, if it's okay, I'll add a couple more points to to some of what you're saying. And answer your question too, John. So about the cooling. Doesn't cooling add more energy to our profile? Why are we adding that in? It's about resilience. So we mentioned about that it's not just anymore about cutting back carbon, but it's a climate commitment too. And so like, for example, when we see really hot weather and then really cold weather, really hot weather again, having cooling and heating in the buildings and to be able to switch back and forth between that is important. Basically for like our safety and our well-being and for being good academically. Then let's see, the other point I want to say was the vernacular of geothermal. We throw that word around a lot and it's hard. I say this on the tours, really what we're saying is ground coupled heat pumps. It's just a huge mouthful to say that. So we say geothermal, it's a lot easier to say. And that's where I think where maybe the miscommunication came with the Board of Trustees, because technically geothermal is like getting energy out of hot rocks underground. And what we're doing is using the ground as energy, like an energy storage device. In the summertime, we're storing heat in underground in that well field and that borehole field out there. And then in the wintertime, we'll pull that heat back out. And what makes that possible, and now I'll highlight to what I say is like the most important thing, heat pumps. That is the technology that is helping us so much. It is heat pumps, it is a refrigeration process. So if you have air conditioning in your car, a refrigerator in your home, or air conditioning in your home, that's a heat pump. And so this technology, it's doing heating and cooling with the refrigeration process to move heat around instead of burning stuff to capture heat out of the waste streams. And that's really key. If you get anything out of this at all, it's heat pumps. And how do union labor, all the labor doing our work.
Prevailing wage.
Prevailing wage, okay.
Prevailing wage, yeah, which is the equivalent of union. And most of our trades people are union. There are a few specialty crews that are not, but they're still being paid prevailing wage.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I feel like that's really important to Oberlin students here about the labor aspect of this, is that there's the treatment of the workers here. And so then I want to share about tours. Any of this information to share with tours. I love giving the tours. I want to get this information into your minds so that you can use it here academically or go with your careers. So
we'll be giving a solid tour shortly on this.
Absolutely,
yes.
Yeah, and we do. There's a scheduled SAP tour once a month on the second Friday at 10 a.m. in the morning. We schedule a tour for any class that wants one, and just reach out if there's like a student group or something you want to tour. Just reach out, and we'll get that done too. I think there's 8 or 9 scheduled for like the next couple months. It's pretty busy right now, but we'll get more in. No problem at all. Thanks for the mic.
I would just add that I would like for us to continue to find opportunities to get integrated with more classes and different classes. We've been in front of a business class once. We've talked with geology a few times, but I'm really hopeful that we can start ramping that up with all the work that's going to be occurring up north. Clearly, we've been in front of a number of environmental studies classes, but that's been about it. And I feel like we could be doing a lot more as far as that is concerned. And maybe not just classes, but also different student groups, specialty student groups that I would be interested in hearing about what's happening and learning a little bit more that's perhaps focused on their discipline. For instance, when we spoke in front of the business class, we really focused more on the financial analysis of the different options and how we got to geothermal from a financial perspective and what the process was to do that analysis. I think we have more to share there that could also help just integrate the program with more of the institution. I think we do great, but we could do better.
Janae, you wanna give us your thoughts?
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, I just want to say, if any of you in the room have suggestions or want more information, please don't hesitate to reach out to one of us. While we have several tools, there's a website, there's the tours. Really, we want to be sharing information in ways that students find it most beneficial to receive it. So any suggestions, criticism, ideas, we are happy to take those. Phil had to jump off, but one of the things he would just reiterate is reducing use and saving energy as much as possible whenever possible. That's one of his, he and Joel are both big advocates of conservation. As far as the communications piece, I feel like Joel was being generous in suggesting that people are confusing geothermal and electricity. People do not fundamentally understand energy. So one of the ways I think that conservation and decarbonization, one of the things that has happened in communication that is not serving us well is that we're focusing on, the polar bears and light bulbs. And really, people do not, it's like disconnecting all of us from our energy system. So understanding how your dorm, how your apartment, how the home you grew up in is heated and cooled is so important. Understanding how the energy systems work on campus is so important. And really, the work that you're talking about with the dashboards and so many of these other projects is getting to the heart of that. So many people do not understand this. We do tours all the time at our plant in St. Paul, and it's predominantly college students. And there is just a gap in understanding. And it's hard to expect folks to go into their communities and be engaged citizens making the big decisions like Dr. Peterson was referring to without fundamentally understanding how their systems work. So it's the thing that excites me the most about the work that I do and really what's exciting about being on campus. So if you have a question, I promise everyone else does too. So please don't hesitate to ask and really, get to understand your systems because it's so vital to this work. One thing in both what Michael and Joel presented that I think is just important to reiterate is that the antiquated energy system that was serving Oberlin had to be replaced. So that is when we're talking about financial models and making those decisions, the existing system was not sustainable. So Oberlin made that additional step instead of just replacing like for like to go towards decarbonization. So that's just an important part of kind of understanding part of this fundamental work.
Heather, your turn.
Hi, everyone. My name is Heather Adelman. I'm the sustainability manager here at the college. So my primary role with this project is really just helping Janae and some of the communication efforts, supporting the integration work that Michael talked about with existing programs that the Office of Environmental Sustainability is undertaking. Things like Eco Olympics that John mentioned, where there are opportunities to tie in with the Sustainable Infrastructure Program. We have over 40 interns that work for my office or our office, excuse me. So looking for opportunities to tie students more into that work, as well as things like Welcome Week. Martina and I worked on a scavenger hunt and some of the stops on that hunt were Sustainable Infrastructure Project features. So really just my role is to support the technical work and translating that to students in the campus.
So we're going to open things up to questions, and I just want to reiterate that we've got a practical goal in general, which is to think about the communication side of these things. And let me just start with a question. So I put together that little sort of description of heat pumps, how the system works in Oberlin. How many people here would say they already knew most of what was written in there? How many people did not know the stuff that was written there? All right, that's sort of the point right there. So like, how do we translate that information into a form that's not only easily accessible to a non-technical audience, but actually interesting to them? Because if they're not interested in it, they're not going to get it either. You guys read that stuff in part because I asked you to read it as part of the class, right? So you had this extra sort of academic motivation. How do we present that stuff in a way that's going to make people super interested and curious and want to see more? So that's kind of like where I'd like this discussion to go, but I want to make sure you get any questions about the system answered, because obviously we need to understand the system before we're in any sort of position to think about how best to communicate it to other people. So the floor is open. You've got our experts here who've been involved in putting the system together.
Can I add one question?
Yeah.
Hopefully somebody in here either lives in one of the buildings that have already been converted, South Hall, Harvey Conner Price, Dascombe, Talcott, North Langston. So has anybody seen the communication material about how best to interface with the new equipment in your room? So my question would be, how do we better get that information out to more people? Because a lot of the challenges we do have where rooms aren't necessarily as comfortable as the students would like them to be, is because students aren't following what's on those sheets. And they're putting rugs or towels or jackets or whatever on the new equipment that is supposed to be keeping their rooms comfortable. So it'd be interesting to hear from you all. A, is that communication good communication? And B, how could we get that out better?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, well, I had my window open all the time and I was like, oh my god, it's so hot in my room, like every single day. And then that slip of paper came under my door and I was like, I'm kind of stupid. So I now shut my window and my room is much more comfortable. I also am curious, like, does opening and closing the blinds make a difference on like the level of like heating going on? Cause like I've been kind of like playing with that sometimes too, but I lost the sheet.
Yeah, absolutely. When it's warmer out, and it's particularly if your window is south facing or west facing, it's gonna heat your room up if you keep your blinds open. So during the points at which the sun would be directly coming into your window, it would be best if you brought the blinds out.
Awesome.
It's similar at like a nighttime in the winter. You'll basically like radiate heat out through your window. So similar thing, you can close your blind, help keep it warmer.
Interesting.
Questions for these guys again on this, helping us.
Actually, I have one more thing, but if you connect with residential education, they might be a good resource in order to kind of spread that information a little bit further, especially for like village spaces and things like that. There's like a village housing handbook that has a bunch of information about the building and everything like that. And that might be a good spot to put some of that information. I work the front desk there, so I know that information gets disseminated to people. And so that might be a good place to at least start and see if there's a way to kind of get the information out more consistently.
Great.
It might be a good spot.
Great, good idea.
I have 3 questions just for both of us, is that all right?
Sure.
Thanks. So my first question is, what year do you expect that savings and money will go past breaking even the project costs?
So when we analyze the different options, we analyze them over a 30-year time frame. And over a 30-year time frame, the new geothermal based system should be roughly 5 to 7% cheaper than if the college had continued with the existing systems and kept reinvesting in the existing systems as they function now. The debt for all of this investment is 30-year debt. So after 30 years, that all of that infrastructure will have been paid off. And the life of this infrastructure, much of it is projected to be 50 plus, some of it 75 years long. So then 30 years out, then the savings really start to increase because the college won't have to keep reinvesting in that infrastructure, but it will continue to provide the operational savings that this investment is making for us now.
All right, that might have answered my second question, I'm gonna ask it anyway. What challenges, if any, might you see in infrastructure maintenance?
So the infrastructure we're putting in has a much longer life cycle to it, and so would be much less challenging than the existing system. If you remember the picture of the old steam pipe, steel erodes more quickly, particularly with steam and condensate systems. So that has much more maintenance upkeep that is required of it. The plastic pipe that you've seen us putting in the ground now does not require that type of maintenance. Certainly inside the central energy facility, on an annual basis, we have to do preventative maintenance, and we have every 5 years we'll have to go in and clean tubes on chillers. There'll be motors over time, they'll have to get replaced and so forth, but nothing more significant than what is typical in any kind of building. Sooner or later you have to replace fans, sooner or later you have to replace belts. It's the same type of thing.
All right, and finally, is this project only viable for large properties such as Oberlin College, or do you think the geothermal system unit you're installing can bring the same benefits, monetary and environmental, to any residential properties in Oberlin?
I want to take that one. So I live in Oberlin, and what I would recommend for this area and for a lot of folks is cold climate heat pumps. It's basically an air source heat pump. So just like if you have air conditioning on your house and you have like a condenser outside, typically those are just like it's a one-way heat pump that just does air conditioning. You get essentially the same system that does heating and cooling. And then I would even recommend, you can get different backup systems, you can get electric or gas backup, but if you have an air source heat pump as your primary heating and cooling system, that'll do a significant reduction in your fossil fuel use in Oberlin. Because then you're basically converting to electricity and then using a really efficient system.
Right, what did you call that?
An air source heat pump.
Air source heat pump.
And it could even be a cold climate air source heat pump. It's just different. Just basically a variation to be more effective at colder climates.
I'm gonna chime in on that one too, because I think this actually, I love the fact that some of you were making a connection to the readings for this week and our discussion last week with community members in Oberlin. Because I think what's different about a district heating system like this from an individual house heating system is it's a solution that that takes into account that the needs of different people on the network or different buildings on the network are different at different times. So even at a given time of year on the campus, there are some buildings that are going to need heating and some buildings that are going to need cooling. A heat pump system does both at the same time, as Michael was saying, so that if you're delivering heat, it's actually more efficient if at the same time you're delivering cooling, because you're getting both of those values out of the same unit. So that has to do with a certain time in the year. But this is a point that I was trying to make in the document I created for you guys, is that occurs over time, over the season as well. As we need more cooling in the summer months because of climate change, the whole summer, we end up heating up the ground. As long as you're pumping heat into the ground, out of buildings into the ground, you're making the ground around those wells. Believe it or not, the whole ground warms up there, not much. It's not like you feel it warming up, but it can warm up by several degrees if you're pumping a lot of heat into it in the summer. All of that then becomes valuable in the winter because it means the coefficient of performance on your heat pumps is going to be enhanced because you're trying to take heat out of a warmer ground than you would otherwise be taking it out of. And so this is where I think we really get into some interesting issues with the community, because you guys are gone in the summer. So the air conditioning load on Oberlin College campus is not that high in the summer unless we start using this, for more conferences and that sort of thing. But the cooling demand in the community as a whole is quite great. So if we in fact expand the system to move into, the downtown, less so the public schools because they have the same sort of seasonality than we do. But if we expand into the downtown, the public library and that sort of things, everyone is actually benefiting from that expansion of the system because their demand is probably going to be particularly great in the summer because of the heat, which means they're taking advantage of a colder ground from the winter when we pulled heat out of it, and they're pumping heat into the ground, which is going to make it easier to pump heat out of the ground in the summer. So there's a district heating system like this is fundamentally different from an individual house's heating system in the sense that if you have multiple people using it for multiple different purposes at one time or at different times of year, you actually extract more benefit. It's actually in some ways a large communal ground source district heat pump system is a communitarian system in the sense of the multiple uses actually benefit everyone.
Yeah, one of the things that we're really excited about is getting the hospital connected, because as you can imagine, in the summer, the hospital has a significant cooling need. They need to keep and they have MRI machines and they have, they generate a lot of heat that they need to get out of it. Right now, what they're doing with that heat is they have a cooling tower that's just on the north side of Hales Gym, right off the northwest corner of Hales Gym. If you've ever gone in that area, you see that cooling tower. So they're taking that heat and just putting it up into the air. What we're going to do is we're going to take that heat and put it into our well field. So that's, essentially free heat that then we get to use in the winter that otherwise is just getting thrown out into the atmosphere. So it's terribly efficient and significantly beneficial from a financial standpoint and from an efficiency standpoint for us to be taking that heat from them. And it helps them too, because it makes their chillers operate more efficiently. The other thing that John touched on that I think is really important is with the district system, a day like today is perfect for us to not even we'll just be sharing energy between buildings, because as John said, on a day like today, there's some buildings that are probably would want to be in cooling mode, and there's some buildings that would be in heating mode. So instead of taking heat out of or putting heat into the well field, we could just be taking heat out of South Hall and sending it to the conservatory, or vice versa. And so that's by far the most efficient way to operate as a campus, where you're taking heat where you don't want it and sending it to where you need it.
Can I just say, this is the equivalent of socialism in a heating system.
Wanted to offer one more heat pump solution for residential homes, if that's okay, back to your question over here. Is you can also use an air source heat pump hybrid water heater to replace a regular domestic hot water generator in your home. Same things, using a heat pump to do that work more efficiently.
Oh yeah, that's when you take in hot air and where higher you'll need to put your.
This would be a storage water heater in your house, like probably in your basement, and there'd be a small heat pump on top of it. And it pulls heat out of the ambient air around in your basement to generate hot water. So something like where you have basement floors and walls that are at ground temperature, it's basically pulling heat out of the ground to generate hot water instead of burning gas to do it. It also dehumidifies your basement, which is a lot of people, if they have basements, have like a dehumidifier running down there. This will, that same system will also dehumidify your house.
Yeah, we have one at my house, works great.
You had your hand up earlier. I want to make sure you get your question answered.
Oh, so not a question, but actually a suggestion with, in terms of the question of how to distribute information to students. I'm thinking about that. I do feel like oftentimes when things go awry, RAs are the first people to hear about it. And yeah, I mean, people are gonna complain to them. So I think that could also be a resource. Because when those things happen, they can respond or have information to distribute to people. Because I think a lot of times they hear about things that even the college, like, I don't know, I think there's a level of fatalism that like, there's nothing to be done about it, whatever. And so people complain, but don't necessarily reach out farther than that. So that's kind of a way to like penetrate the dorm kind of closed dorm community. That occurs to me.
Presents.
Yeah. Bryn, you had a question.
Yeah, so like you're changing the temperature like ever so slightly of like the ground. Does that like by like storing heat in it, does that affect like how you plan like restoration aspects? Because like does that affect like the plants you would choose or like, I don't know, like local wildlife, or is it just kind of?
Yeah, no, people often ask that question, and it's good that people do ask that question, but the exchange of heat is taking place well below the surface where there's just not a lot of biological activity down there that you need to worry about. I mean, there are microbes everywhere, so you're definitely altering a deeper microbial community. But I mean, as an ecologist, I can say it's not going to make a particle of difference to anything on the surface. The grass will grow just fine on top of that, which is basically what we're growing up there. It's not gonna, because people do ask that question, it's not gonna care.
The wells are 600 feet deep.
Yeah.
So.
And the top of the well is like 10 to 6 feet below the surface.
Yeah, it's not even the surface that the wells don't, the like all of them, yeah, it's like the top is not really where you're extracting heat from. I will say where this does sometimes make a difference is people will install geothermal in pond systems, which are very efficient. It's much cheaper to do a geothermal system in a pond because you don't need nearly the heat exchangers because water conducts heat really well. There you really can, result in significant variation in temperature, which could have an effect on the ecology of the pond.
We have a system in San Francisco that we're constructing right now that will do the same thing, except we're exchanging temperature with the San Francisco Bay. And in that circumstance, we can only change the temperature. We have to measure the temperature of the bay where we're taking water out and putting it back, and we can only change the temperature 4 degrees. So we have to have our exchange, all the control systems set up so that the temperature never varies more than 4 degrees, specifically so that we don't negatively affect any of the ecology within the bay.
So
Hot
the discharge
water does
temperature.
not hold oxygen well, and so if you heat up the water in the summer, you're gonna end up having serious negatives on the aquatic biology.
So for all of the updated buildings, is there like one set goal temperature that they're just all being regulated to? Like, how does that work?
Generally, yes. Do you know the temperatures off the top of your head? Is it 65 in this?
There was different temperatures for different places, so like the conservatory had its
Yeah,
own
that's
set of criteria, because basically for relative humidity, science center had criteria, our museum had special criteria. And then there was, I feel like it was to keep it between like
65 and 70-ish.
something like, we'd have like a band for like residential halls to say like, we have to keep, in the wintertime, it has to be in this band, in the summertime, keep it in this band.
And it's, we certainly are running, having some challenges. It is as each building is converted, because each building is unique and the control systems in some of the buildings are antiquated and the integration between the two sometimes is not exactly as it was supposed to be as far as the design and specifications. Over time, we won't have those challenges, but in the first year after a building has been converted, there's some fine tuning that has to occur, just so that we can learn how that building operates. Because quite honestly, prior to the implementation of this program, there hasn't been a lot of good information about how the buildings operate. We now have that information as we go to each building, and so we're creating a huge database of all of the trending that occurs in each building, so that we can be fine tuning and make sure we optimize how each building operates, and to make sure you all are comfortable in each space that you're in. But there's always a few bugs right when you implement.
So then what do all of the buildings that haven't been converted yet run on? Like how are those temperatures?
So they're still on the steam system.
Okay.
So in the first year, in the summer of 2021, while we were constructing the piping to go down to South Campus here, we also installed what's called a steam converter station in the central energy facility, which is just on the northwest corner of Mudd. And it's essentially a heat exchanger where we are using the steam that's being generated to make the hot water that's being sent down. So right now, we're still sending steam up to North Campus while we're sending hot water down to South Campus. And then at the end of next year, at the end of 2024, all of the buildings that have been reconverted will now be on the hot water system.
Do you know how the buildings that haven't been updated yet, how those temperatures are being decided and regulated with the steam?
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone know?
It's a little, it's random in the sense that each building's a little different. Some buildings have more sophisticated controls in them, some do not, some are pretty antiquated. And so some buildings, the steam is just getting pushed out to them, and the steam is just getting sent out to all the radiators, and that's why in the third floor, it'll be super hot as compared to, say, the main floor. Other buildings have more sophisticated control systems in them, so they're managing it with local control systems in each room and in the common areas.
Okay.
But it's not consistent as compared to what it will be at the end of this 4-year program.
Thank you. Just out of my own curiosity, what did you guys like go to school for or study?
Pardon me? What
Just,
did
like, what did you go to school for? Like, what did you study when you?
business finance?
Okay.
Nothing to do with what we're doing.
I thought you were an engineer.
No, I stayed at a Holiday Inn last night.
I have to run to at 2:00, but I did electrical and computer engineering undergrad degree, and then mechanical engineering for grad school.
Okay,
I have a professional engineering license.
okay.
See you folks, thank you so much.
I have a couple of English degrees.
I have an environmental studies degree with a poli-sci minor.
Thank you.
Well, we have actually run down on our book time with you guys. So thank you so much for joining us and for presenting and answering questions.
Yeah, thanks for the good questions. We do Janae, carbonneutraloc.com, right?
Yes.
Carbonneutraloc.com. And there's an opportunity in there to click on a link that then you can email questions or comments in. Or you can reach out to Martina and she can convey the information to us.
I can share the website.
Sure. And I'd be happy to follow up with anybody working on data visualization or additional elements. we struggle with these things too as communicators. So anything that you want help with, we'd be happy to help. I'd be happy to help. Good luck to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. I'm gonna leave this on because because Sammy's remote today, so I told her I'd record what we're doing. So I wanna take, I mean, unfortunately, I thought that was a great discussion. I felt like we got a little bit less into the sort of visualizing than I had hoped we would, but that's okay. It was a good discussion. You got to meet with some people. I do see your hand up, Holden. Do you have a quick question, or because I would like to go around and have everyone just sort of kind of reflect a little bit on this discussion and maybe on the readings as well.
Yeah, I think it's a quick question. It's just related to readings.
Okay.
I just want to make sure I can explain for myself. So in the heating and cooling cycle for a heat pump, well, how is air condensed and evaporated?
Yeah. So again, you've got like, and maybe I'll throw that diagram up. Just get that. Let's see. That's what the pump is for, because there literally is a pump in a heat pump. It's not, it's pumping heat, but there's actually a physical pump in that contraption. So I stole a diagram and stuck it in this. So let's just, yeah, let's go away. Bigger, and let me share that here since okay. And like I say, I will zoom that a little bit. Get rid of my, find where it is I do that right here. All right. So at some level, the things are actually pretty darn simple. You have to think about there being a loop. There's a loop of piping that goes between two heat exchangers. And there's a pump, a compressor pump. That thing that says compressor there is a pump. And what it's doing, and you can often see these on older refrigerators, there was like a big black thing that stuck on top. And if you looked at the big black thing, there were tubes coming in and out of it. That's literally the compressor. It's just a pump that takes gas and, like a bicycle pump, it just mushes it. And when it mushes it, because the volume is decreasing in size, the pressure's increasing, and that will just get hot. And it gets hot, and I'll use a refrigerator as an example here, because I think it's a really simple one that you can see. If you were to go into the AGLC kitchen area there, and you were to wrap your head around and look behind that refrigerator there, you'd see a bunch of coils on the back. And those coils are on the condenser side when you're condensing that gas. And sometimes you condense it all the way into a liquid. In some coolant systems, it gets condensed all the way into a liquid. It gets really hot. And all that heat just flows out of those coils in the back. What makes a ground source heat pump different is you can think of that heat as being dissipated into the ground. So instead of it just being a bunch of coils on the back of the fridge, it's the well field. The heat is going into the well field, and it's being dissipated out there. And then it goes through a valve, that number 4 there, which isn't really labeled, as an expansion valve. And so when that liquid, which is all condensed, comes back to that allows it to spread out again and expand. And it expands on what's called the evaporator side there. And as it expands, it'll suck heat in from the surrounding area. And that's what cools the right-hand side and heats the left-hand side. So if you think of that as being a refrigerator, this is inside, this is sitting on top of the refrigerator, this is going on inside the refrigerator, This is going on the coils on the outside of the refrigerator.
So liquid is. Liquid just enters one way with heat in it, right?
It's a closed loop here. It's taking a gas and compressing it, becoming a liquid, and then it's expanding back into a gas. So it's just going through a cycle of being compressed and expanded. And different gases are used. You guys might be familiar with chlorofluorocarbons, the things that trash the ozone layer. That's what 1960s, 50s or 60s, they discovered chlorofluorocarbons, which were this an amazing chemical, which turned out to be really good for compressing and expanding in this cycle. And so all of the refrigeration units for maybe 40 years, all used chlorofluorocarbons because they were this wonderful, they were totally non-toxic. They were like this great environmental discovery, chlorofluorocarbons. Except then we discovered they were destroying the ozone layer because they were non-toxic and they were great for compressing and expanding. So that's what we used for many years. The earliest refrigerators actually used ammonia gas, NH3, and they used that in their compression cycles. But ammonia is really toxic if it gets out. If you break in this thing and you get ammonia all over the place, it's really gnarly and can hurt people. So they stopped using ammonia, but the interesting thing is they're moving back to using ammonia now. Most big industrial systems, our system will be using ammonia as the material that they compress and expand. Some people actually use CO2 as the gas in here. You can use CO2 in these systems and compress expanded, but CO2 turns out to be a lot more abrasive on compressors than ammonia. So we tend to use ammonia now in large industrial grade heat pump systems like the one we're building on Overland College campus. So we'll be using ammonia here.
I have two questions. Why don't refrigerators just are people working to make things that are not heat pumps, but basically function like heat pumps, also pump that heat into the ground to kind of.
Oh, why don't you have your refrigerator?
What?
Why don't you have your refrigerator connected to?
Yeah, why is that not
You could, I think if you had a very large plant that was if you had a very large cooling plant, you probably might think about using a ground source type system for cooling. If you were running like a big warehouse that was a big freezer or refrigerator warehouse, I'm sure there are people doing that who do have geothermal systems in there. It's just in your house, it's such a small unit and it would be so expensive. Joel mentioned people putting air-to-air heat pumps in their house. That's what I've done in my house. It is more efficient even for homeowners to install a geothermal system. It costs bucket loads of money to dig all the trenching and do everything. It's expensive. And heat pumps have just become so much more efficient in terms of how much energy a compressor uses. Like modern compressors are just way more efficient. And that's why, and also the winters are getting warmer and the summers are getting hot, a lot warmer. So around here, it's one of the benefits of two reasons why it makes sense to shift to heat pumps now. One is our winters are not as cold as they were. And two is we're gonna need air conditioning in the summer. It makes it easier to use air-to-air heat pumps instead of using a geothermal heat pump system. So it's just vastly less expensive to do an air-to-air heat pump. But the problem is if it's really cold in the winter, it's very hard to extract heat from really cold air. So they become very inefficient when it's really cold out. And we will have, the polar vortex, which is another problem of climate change, means that we're messing up the normal Gulf Stream. And so sometimes you get these Arctic, things that extend way down into the country. And it does mess you up a little bit because if you've installed an air-to-air heat pump in your system and it gets down to -10 degrees outside, it's going to be cold in your house because it's just really difficult for any heat pump, even a cold air heat pump, to be extracting heat from -10 degree air. There's just not much heat to extract, and the coefficient of performance goes down to practically nothing in that situation because it's just really hard to extract heat from cold air, just as it's really hard to cool down really hot air.
For the move of industrial sized systems back to ammonia, obviously it's a better alternative to chlorofluorocarbons, but is it just a higher faith in the systems that we have now for them to not break and spill ammonia everywhere?
Yeah, the technology's improved no end. You know, Marissa happened to be with me on this London trip last fall. And one of the coolest damn pieces of technology, you can concur or not concur, that we saw was a heat pump system that was designed on top of an abandoned subway station. Just like the coolest damn thing in the world. What they're doing is like they've got this, it connects with the subway system underneath it. And in England, they've got a problem where the subway is too damn hot, right? You generate all this heat because of all the mechanical energy going down there. So they want to cool the subway system. So this heat pump system that is built on top of an abandoned subway station is extracting waste heat from the subway and using it to heat the whole neighborhood. It's like with this waste heat. That system was built, what was it, like 5 years old or something like that? It wasn't very old. And it was an ammonia-based system. And the engineer who showed us that plant was saying, nowadays, because technology has changed so fast, we could build the same system using much less ammonia in it and have a lot less of the safety features that we currently have installed because we're just using a lot less ammonia. So the technology is evolving really rapidly as we transition towards this tech. So my guess is that you just don't need as much, you just get by with a lot less stuff because you're figuring out how to use it more efficiently. So I mean, I'm pretty confident in the engineers that, you know, they're not putting in systems that are dangerous at this level. So yeah. I do want to get a chance to go around, like a bunch of other things I want to do today and getting you guys ready. So let's just do a quick go around and maybe we could focus a little bit on what kind of tidbits did you take from readings and from this discussion that you feel are going to be important in thinking about like a kiosk display and like conveying information to people in a way that's going to actually be interesting as well as educational. So that is a general thing. I mean, you can say whatever you want, but I'm throwing that in there as sort of a primer. Does anyone want to start this conversation and then we'll go in a circle? Just something you think is like important that you picked up. Yeah,
I
Catherine.
think it's important for like big projects like this and also for like advertising on the environmental dashboard and kind of conveying information to emphasize how it's going to impact like you, not like the general you, but you specifically, because I think we talk a lot about how much this is going to help the community and everything like that, but I think it can really help to remind people that it is helping them specifically and like you will pay less for this or you will have a more environmentally friendly home. Like that's the thing that I think is really going to get people. Because that's the thing that's going to stick out to them. So that was.
Yeah, so what's in it? You're going back to the sort of like the communication principles.
Yeah.
You're leaning on the what's in it for you piece of this. Okay, that's great. All right. Brynn or Ophelia, and then we'll go around and whoever volunteering among you. Who wants to go?
Yeah, so I think for me, it brings up or connects to the question of like how much do we need people to understand versus what do they want to know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, do they need to understand how a heat pump works? Like, I think that's a question worth asking. And like, I am not a STEM kid, but I think I'm generally, you know, a careful reader. And it's like, that's a lot of information, even though it's fairly simple. To expect somebody to, in a non-academic context, to like want to know. And so I guess I just question like, in disseminating this information, what is our ultimate goal? And what is the understanding that we want? That is most important, like, because Janae said like there's a gap in understanding for the systems, the energy systems, both in the college and expanding beyond that. And so I think it's very much part of like our systems thinking, kind of a larger perspective that we want to share and want people to be thinking on that scale, especially in terms of the decisions that they make. And so to me, maybe more than specifically knowing how like a heat pump works is like the awareness that we need to be thinking about systems as well as individual behavior. And I guess that's something that's kind of been brewing for me, thinking about, like this week especially, and then Eco Olympics. Which is like, what is the relationship between infrastructure and behavior? Because obviously they're not in conflict, but I think there is a certain level of like conceptual conflict between the importance of using resources responsibly, but at the same time, it's like maybe we just need a totally different system.
Yeah, cool. That's a lot.
I was also thinking about the like what's in it for you aspect, and like what was said today, like relaying information that people can understand would really help them be able to like contextualize what's happening in their world with their actions and things that can benefit or affect them directly. And I think like even just bringing it down to like, or relating it to the project I'm on, the Eco Olympics dashboard, and like engaging younger communities to these issues is important because it really fosters a sense of like efficacy in their actions towards like the bigger actions taken by external people.
Yeah, I like you using the word efficacy there. That's really important. Hold on.
Sorry, just reading my notes. I know I was thinking how we could talk about this in a system speaking lens. There's, of course, there's just like the actual system we're looking at right there, and it's also a matter of how we're affected and what we're affecting. Well, of course, we're affected by hot and cold temperatures, but so that's which are itself affected by climate change, which is itself affected by gas emissions, which is kind of a problem when our responses, these effects are air conditioners that put out more gas emissions. In a way, I guess a better system might be relying more on these heat pumps or air or geothermal, so that way we reduce our carbon emissions, and thus, well, at least mitigating our outside effects on the climate change, which comes back around to affect us with hot and cold temperatures.
I was thinking sort of similar to what Ophelia was talking about like what is necessary information. And I think that definitely, like I think that there's some explanation of how it works can be useful, but I think that there needs to be like some a very brief sort of explanation that emphasizes key words, I think, about efficiency and sort of a cycle, recycling kind of thing. I think that I personally, as I was doing the readings, I was totally kind of glazing over as I was reading some of the really specific things. But I was a lot more interested in what the impacts were for me and the world and or the community. And I think that some information of how it works on just a very basic level is important, but it can be sort of framed or emphasized in a way that's emphasizing, I guess, key aspects that are maybe more interesting to people who are not experts or really interested in engineering.
I was thinking about how Joel mentioned the labor practices and how that kind of changed the way I looked at it, because I think I don't know, a lot of us have an association with the college and them not treating professors or custodial staff or anything I don't know, super well. And I feel that could presenting that information could definitely change the way students view the project. And I think that ties in with the commitment and consistency value. I'm trying to think. Yeah. Oh, I also was interested by how the person who worked for the contracting company actually wanted to be in front of students, because I think that's something that I expected. And yeah, I think that's cool.
Right. Excellent question. Do you ever, what you said the.
I really wanna just go around first, so we can ask questions later. Yeah, I wanna finish the circle.
Thinking about our project with the elementary school specifically, I think that this like heating cycle is gonna be really good for people to, like, visualize, is to see a real chart. Like connecting the fact that like this is where your heat is coming from and this is where your heat is going. Not just like how does heating work, but like that visualization is gonna be really important. But separately for Oberlin College, I feel like it'd be really good for students to know more about how this all works, because I feel like we all get so frustrated when the heating or cooling does not line up with what we need. Like I remember finding like work orders my freshman year, we were all finding them in cost because it was like 95 degrees, no air conditioning, and we were all like dying. So I feel like just disseminating this information is gonna be helpful.
Yeah, I also, I agree with that. I've been thinking about what you were talking about in the beginning about like a person on the board of trustees, like someone in a very important like position. They didn't know basically what the system was about, and did you say that they were like voting on that issue?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that, I would say that's pretty alarming to me, that like kind of how big of a disconnect there is between like the people deciding on these issues and like the information and like understanding this information, and then again like the people who like these systems affect also understanding this information. I feel like there's been kind of like separate chunks and like yeah, it's good and important to figure out systems to effectively communicate this information to people so they can understand how their like actions are affecting themselves and other people.
Like important, but like this actual class like really solidified that understanding. It seemed like they already had all the numbers crunched out, like how temperature changes and how much money it costed, but something as simple as communicating what this project does was like an almost impossible task for them, especially in like when they had fixed some of the residential buildings on campus and they slipped these like papers into the door, like trying to help everyone understand like it actually behave and it actually not working. So it was like really interesting to me that like communication is what they're really suffering.
Building off a few threads, I think one of our biggest challenges with the dashboard and with some of the projects in this class are how do we convey information that is accessible and engaging for all audiences? So how do we get to the elementary school kids while also teaching adults the same material in a way that doesn't come off as patronizing?
For me, I feel like this kind of contradicts some other people's points, but for me, like when I'm reading something that's really intense, really over my head, I feel like the graphics really like draws it all together for me. So even though like it's not super necessary for me to know all of this exactly or know all these big words or know exactly how the system works, I feel like seeing the graphics just really takes all these little pieces of what I'm getting in my brain like as I'm reading and then just like piles it into more of a cohesive communication way, I feel like. And so especially since our target audience for our group is kids, I feel like that really emphasized the importance for graphics for our project is going to be. I mean, especially since we're doing like data visualization, there's going to be graphics in that, but I feel like it just further emphasizes like how well good graphics can really like emphasize a point as you're reading and learning something that might not exactly be your strong suit.
Yeah, for me, I think my takeaway is just thinking about the importance of not also like understanding like how the system works, but also like how we interact with it. Like what I think you point out about like having this information sheets and like understanding like when you have to like maybe that you don't have to like open your window when the heating is on, and like how that can like affect thermostat in your room. So I think that sometimes like even like beyond understanding the technicalities of how it works, it's important like to communicate to people like how they can like, or what's like in their like power sort of to like adjust the system or like to like properly use and like take the most advantage of it. So I think that's, yeah, a point to my mind.
Yeah, the communication sheets or like information sheets were super helpful for my dorm, but I just have a few thoughts. One of them, like the trustees, like I feel like they should have to take a test before they make any decisions about like, do you know the material? Like, it's just like, I don't know, like once you graduate college, like you're not expected to like keep up with learning always, and like that feels silly to me that like being 22 versus like, I don't know, 27, like there's different requirements. Also like I'm really into the empathetic linking like idea in terms of like communication principles, and like especially with kids, like I feel like if I was trying to explain like a heat pump or something like that, like I'd almost like want to like make a heat pump like a person and be like, okay, so like if I was getting outside and there was a lot of hot air, like what would happen to my head? Like, or I don't know, like, and like what happens to my feet? Like something like that where like it's like taking those principles and like putting it into something that like is more already easily grasped, I think, by like the target audience, or like maybe not even like a person, but like some sort of object. And like for one of the 101 projects that we're developing, like a power display on like different light bulbs that you can use, like power, like all caps, like that organization. And like I just really like the idea of like something very like tangible when you're like kind of like interface with like a new thing and like learn about it. And like obviously the kiosk is like digital, but like even with like the app, like if you could press different control buttons, like what would happen to the temperature of the room? Like I don't know, like I feel like I would like that because like practice makes perfect, like for understanding too.
Really great thoughts going around. I appreciate that. I appreciate the sort of, some of you seem to really be emphasizing this sort of what's in it for me side of things, or how does this connect with me, even if it's not what's in it for me, like what's the connection with me? That question that several of you seem to be posing about like what level of explanation is necessary for someone to be an informed, I don't know, community member, like what is the level, you know, like obviously I just got into sort of like details about like what kinds of gas is in there. I think that's totally irrelevant for most people. It makes no difference. They might be interested in it, but it's not something they need to know. And then ultimately, okay, here's one of the great challenges about like an interactive display that really is important for everyone to think about who's going to be working with this stuff is you could create a whole presentation, you know. So I created what I thought as a reading assignment was like the level of information that you would need to know in order to be able to communicate about this to other people. Like you need to know how a heat pump works in order to be able to decide what other people need to know. So I was thinking that's probably a little bit higher level of understanding than I think the campus needs to know, but it's a level that you would need to know in order to figure out what was the right level for campus to understand, right? And that was a text explanation. And I really agree with those of you who are saying, yeah, it's gotta be really visual. Because I think there's a couple ways to get people. First of all, if you've got a kiosk display, no one has to look at that kiosk display ever. So it's a choice about whether you want to see it. So you do need to sort of think really hard about what can I make here that's going to be cool and attract people? Like what kind of visualization is actually going to be so intriguing that people are going to want to look at it and then want to learn more about what they're seeing. And then you also need to think about the fact that if you have a sequence of content that's designed to tell a story, the way that, you know, I created a sequence of narrative in those 3 pages that were designed to tell a story. Imagine now a situation where people are coming in and out of different parts of that sequence at different points. Like they might not get that continuous sequence. How are you concurrently giving them tidbits where everything they learn is its own little contained story and has meaning in and of itself? even if what you really want is for them to see the entire narrative at some point, but maybe they're getting that narrative in little chunks and sort of almost little random chunks. How do you deliver that information in a form in which if they experience random chunks of information, but they experience those random chunks of information over the course of 5 months, by the end of those 5 months, they've got a relatively cohesive understanding of the pieces of this. All of those seem to me like key things to be sort of like meditating on as we think about this. And to me, the visualization side is just critical. And unfortunately, I think because we haven't really dived into visualization, and we will momentarily, there's the question of, okay, well, what are you talking about in terms of visualization? And let me just say on this diagram, I think red and blue make tons of sense. People understand red and blue as hot and cold, right? So whatever we're doing in terms of communication, I think it's gonna want to have red, blue, and different shades of red and blue and gradients between them. For a lot of people, I think you're gonna understand it well if you see loops going down and back up into the ground, right? That's what you're gonna see. You're probably gonna have one of the little arrows that are animated so you see water flowing through them, so stuff flows through that well. If it's heating season, presumably you've got water coming in that's very blue and coming out of the end of that well. So as it goes through that well field, it's changing color. And when it comes out the well field, it's a different color. And maybe you have a temperature gauge on the inflow side that's telling you what is the temperature coming in, what's the temperature coming out. We'll measure those things. We can communicate that. And my contention, maybe I'm just a geek, but my contention is if you had a really cool looking set of loops going up and down with changing colors and arrows going through them and temperature gauges on either side, people would stop and look at that. And if there was information associated with that saying, right now, the well is in, a mode where it's providing heat to the campus. Now it's doing that you could capture people's attention and maybe send them through a couple slides which didn't actually have an animation, but explained how it works. And now I'm thinking with like buildings on campus. Let's imagine a map of buildings on campus, and let's imagine each one of them has a little globule on it that can be different colors. And depending on how much heat that building is sucking up or how much cooling it's sucking up, it's going to be a different color. So you've got the campus, you've got some sort of cartoon of the campus, a plan view, you're looking down on the campus so you can see buildings, something along the line of what Michael was showing. But you've got blobs on top of every single building, and those blobs are changing color and sort of dynamically animating. And maybe you could play the last year, and so you could watch those colors. You'd have a little gauge which showed you where you are in the year. Maybe to make it a little bit more empathetic, it might not have a squirrel or a fish, but you could have an animation that shows you the seasons going by somehow. You've got trees with leaves on them, the leaves are falling off, there's snow coming in there. So it can play the last year's worth of data with cartoons, and you're seeing that animation of these little colored globules on top of the building. That's what I'm thinking about when I'm thinking visualizations and animations of data, something where you could look at it and get this intuitive sense. You don't need to know absolute numbers for any of this, but get this sense, like I'm looking at spring, a warm day in the spring, and some of the buildings have red globules on them, meaning that they're being heated right now, and some of the buildings have blue globules on them, meaning they're being cooled right now. And I'm getting some sort of sense of how heat is flowing. This is what I'm talking about. We got to figure out like, what is this visualization? What does this thing look like? That would be something where you'd want to look at the damn screen because it's just really cool. And you'd come out of it with this sort of like, oh, I get it. There's like a well, and then you're moving heat among buildings as well. And sometimes it's going back and forth from the well system. Sometimes it's going back and forth among buildings. That's what I'm talking about here. It's like thinking at that level, and cartoons that are sort of like changing seasons and stuff. So you get that sense. Yeah.
Why?
What?
Like, I don't know, I feel like we need.
You said why?
Yeah,
Good question. I like that question. Why would you want people to know that?
yeah.
I like the fact that you asked that question. My answer to that question is because if you don't understand that heating buildings is, a couple things is, partly the why of what I'm saying is because it's cool and it would attract your attention and get you interested enough so that you'd want to learn more. So that's part of the why cool animations like that is partly because I think the animations can be what sucks you in so that you actually are learning enough about it so you understand why it's important that that we're transitioning from a fossil fuel-based system to a geothermal system, and why a geothermal system is a really efficient system, and why we need to transition our every heating system in the entire world to being a heat pump system, because we're going to need to run the global economy on electricity that's generated with renewable energy. People need to know that. If they don't know that, we're not going to get there.
Yeah, I just wonder if there's a distinction between understanding the significance and the impacts of that change and understanding the functioning and the operations at play in the systems themselves.
And that, I think you're getting at a level of, you're getting at the question of what level, and also why is someone going to be interested in learning information? Why is someone going to be intrigued? And it's my contention that some people are going to be intrigued because of cool visualizations, that it's actually the cool visualizations that come first and the information that comes slightly secondary. And some people, it's going to be information first and visualizations that come second. And some people are not going to be interested, period. And different people are going to be interested in different things. To Rhea's point, people who are interested in labor issues, you know, where's their angle on this? Where are we getting their angle on this? You know, how does all this fit together? How do you tell a narrative or set of narratives which have something in it for all these different constituencies who have different things that they're going to grasp, different reasons that they're going to get into it? But I come back to sort of, you know, and this is just my premise. I think in a democratic society, people need to have some understanding. You can't have people like that trustee who don't have a fucking clue about how the system works, making decisions about how we're going to invest our money and why it's important to invest the money that way. Yeah.
I feel like I have another why, and it's just kind of like, I don't know, as someone who cares about the environment, it's like right now, I would say like barely anyone knows where their heating and cooling system comes from or like what impacts that has. And so it's almost like knowledge is power. Like we know that this is clean energy. We know, like I guarantee if you went around the campus right now and asked what students what system we're moving to, they wouldn't know that it's a geothermal system. So it's almost like if everyone knows we're moving to a geothermal system, then they go somewhere else, they get a job, and they're at a place where the heating system needs replaced. And it's like, oh, I went to a college that had a geothermal heating system. I just feel like the knowledge is power in a sense of like a connectedness of, you know, what your impacts are. I don't know. That's just kind of like my why. Like, why wouldn't you want to know? Like, why don't you want to know where your heat comes from? Why don't you want to know what impact that has on the environment?
The number why for just including visuals is that maybe it's good enough for most anybody to understand, then ideally they would be able to explain to themselves with that visual what's going on, and then someone else asks them, they can explain that visual, they can explain what's going on with that visual, and if you understand visual and the information behind it well enough, they can adapt that visual to better explain to that other person if necessary. It's like it's like your own little package, your own little masterization of a major little package rapid option.
Cool. Okay. We have 10 minutes left, and I want us to think a little bit and start connecting this stuff with an assignment that you have for next week. So let me just actually maybe I'll keep sharing the screen and shift the schedule and talk a little bit about this week and assignments and that sort of thing. Okay. So here we are for today, Introduction to the SIP project. Next class, different set of readings. Love the way you guys engaged with these readings. This is sort of very much focused on work we're doing in Cleveland. So I won't say more about that. But I want to say a couple things about the community voices assignment. So I'll open that up for a second. And I think everyone has chosen, you know, as I said over the weekend in an email to you guys, there you know, there are templates here for what you send out. I would send, cause some of you copied me, make sure you're sending this stuff below here, because you want to make sure you're giving them an explanation of what the heck the competition is. You know, and has everyone gotten emails out to people? Okay, very important to do that because it takes a while to get these things settled. Please mark when you send your stuff out. So if you look at this sign up for interviews here, some of you are, actually only one of you has marked down, only Catherine, has marked down when you sent out your email. So please do mark that down so we can track what people are up to. And if for some reason we only have one spare person right now, oops, I didn't need to do that. We only have one spare person. Hopefully I'll be getting a couple more spare people in case some people don't. Oh, we have 2 spare people. And they're both library people who are likely to respond. So if some of you are having trouble getting responses, please make sure to do that. Now, one other thing I wanted to point out as well is that there's a folder with templates for your interviews here, and I actually filled it with lots of blank templates. So these, each one of these things, you should replace it with basically your name and the name of the person you interviewed. So name of the person you interviewed by your name, and it's a little template that you should use. So I put enough in here for everyone in the class. So this is just a little template where you should put transcription results and your quotes, and this is what you're turning in actually, this is the thing. So do make sure you're using these things. There is also a folder in here, so you just take an existing one and put your, oops, that's not where I was. Just take an existing one of these and change it to your name. Don't make a copy of it, use one that exists. And then there's a folder for photographs, there's a folder for audio files. Yes.
Where do all of these files exist? Like, where can we find them?
They're all linked within this document. I just clicked on the link within this. I just clicked on the link within this. I just clicked on this.
So the community voices assignment document?
Yeah, if
Okay.
you just click within there, you'll get to that. You'll get to that link. They're also linked within. They're also linked within the. I mean, if you go back to assignment drop, they're linked in there too. So if you go up to the top of this, they're linked there as well. If you go to assignment drop and go down to there, they're linked in here, community voices interview assignment. Well, this will link you to that document, which will link you there, so it's linked in directly. Yeah, okay, so there's that that I wanted to make sure people were aware of. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the assignment that I'm gonna spend the last 5 minutes talking about. And which are these 2 assignments. How many of you, because I know there are a few people in this course, you have a question, Catherine?
Yeah, on the syllabus, it says that the community voices assignment is due on Thursday. like
Yeah,
this
I realize
Thursday.
that many of you are not going to have it done by then.
Just soon is the.
Yeah, as soon as you can get it
Wonderful.
done. I mean, I was a little late in getting
Yeah, no worries. it's worth it.
getting people to volunteer to be, yes.
So I sent up a follow-up email today. If I don't hear back from my person at all, like which day should I be like, this probably isn't working, like.
Yeah, I'd send at least 3 emails, and
Okay.
I don't think it hurts to send them like one day after the next.
Okay, cool.
I mean,
Yeah,
people, it's hard to get these interviews set up. That's why I sort of pre-set up people to interview. Are you interviewing a high school student?
yeah, but so they didn't have school yesterday, so I'm kind of thinking. that
Right, they
maybe-
did not have school yesterday, that's true. Yes,
You think we should send 12 emails to our interviewees or librarian?
what's that?
You think we should send follow-up invitations to our interviewees or librarian?
Yeah, totally, absolutely. You know, they've got a lot going on in their life, you know. My experience is a lot of people in the real world out there are not terribly responsive to emails, and it just takes a bit to get through.
And all of these interviews should happen in the library, like students or anything?
Oh, you can interview students, you can interview people wherever they're comfortable. I mean, I think the people who work in the library, the obvious place to interview them is the library, because that's gonna be very convenient for them. But you have a choice with high school students. I mean, you know, wherever they want to be interviewed is probably fine. They'll let you know what they're comfortable with. Yeah, I mean, they might be psyched to be interviewed on the college campus. You know, you just got to check in with them and just ask them where's best. You know, maybe they want to go to slow train. Who knows? Whatever they're good with is fine.
So if we're going to the high school, we just like go in and say we're part of this class and.
If they want to be interviewed in the high school.
I thought, okay, maybe I read this wrong. On the template, on the high school email template, it said at the library.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
I
think
just
that is
use that
the
as a
library.
default. You can, the library in the high school sucks. It's not a great space. I mean, you can put whatever you want in there. I mean, wherever is convenient for you is fine. I just copied and used the same template and just I didn't notice that I said the library. In the library, I think, as was mentioned in our panel last week, it is the most neutral place in the community. But I think with most high school students, just trust their judgment, like where's convenient for you is fine.
So, okay, so since I took it as the school library,
Right.
we scheduled it during a school time.
That's, if they're willing to do it, that's fine. I mean, it's whatever they're willing to do. I mean, whatever
Okay.
you can do with them.
Do you think the school would let me in though?
The school will let you in. I mean, it's like the worst library ever, the school's library.
Is there like a conference room or something else
There
besides?
probably, I mean, there's a cafeteria. I mean, the students will be able to help you figure out where you can
Okay.
interview them.
Okay,
You know, they're all very intelligent kids. They can help you figure it out, yeah.
What are the school hours? Like, when do people have classes in high school?
Good question. I think it's very variable. I say this with a student who's in the high school, so I should know the answer to this. But I don't know, he often shows up around 3. It's hard to say when he gets home, but you know, oftentimes he's staying late for various things. It's like, it's pretty variable, you
Okay.
know? Yeah. It's a relatively open high school. They, you know, I think once you reach a certain grade, they'll let you leave campus and do things. So, you know, yeah, I should know these things, but I actually don't. Just ask them. You know, they know what they can do and what they can't do. They're all good kids. Yeah. All right, now, in our last 2 minutes now, I want you to, okay, so I wanted to ask, how many of you did the resource signature assignment in 101? How many of you did not do the resource
What is the
signature?
resource signature?
When you're using Building OS, most sections do it, but some of them may not have done it for some reason. You get in Building OS and you sort of track how much energy and water you're using in your dorm. Is that ringing bells? It would ring bells if you did it. Okay. Well, so I have 2 choices here. For those of you who have not done this, so these are 2 options for becoming more familiar with Building OS technology. The resource signatures assignment, which many of you have done in 101, is kind of cookbooky. It tells you exactly what to do. And so for those of you who've had no experience with Building OS, it's probably the easier assignment to do. For those of you who have done the resource signatures assignment, I would like you to do this sort of problem solving for conservation using Building OS assignment, because it's a little bit more open-ended, and if you have some experience, it's different. It's kind of like you decide what you want to do. So I'm just going to open one of these, but you could open either one. There are templates for these assignments. I can see Holden is in this one right now. You know, for the second part of next class, I was thinking we'd have more time today, but we haven't quite got into it. For the second part of next class, I'll get you into this. But this navigating guide to Building OS is definitely something you're going to want to have open while you use this one, because it explains all the different tools you can use. So I would say for Thursday, try to start this assignment in the sense that you get into building OS, start playing with it a little bit. And then we can pick up at that point in the sort of second part of Thursday's class after we've met with our Cleveland dashboard folks. Yes, Holden, I'm meeting with you after this, so I can probably just answer your question immediately after this. All right, you good? Good stuff.
You were sitting on that. You were sitting on that fact.
The whole time. I'll be at Audie's, I'll be like, this is a Zarf. It's called a Zarf. Like the thing that goes around your coffee cup.
A Zarf?
Yeah, that's like the actual name of that.
Interesting. It's
Yeah.
insulation. It's designed to, you know, allow you to pick up a hot cup.
Side note, I just want to plug my event real quick. The Senate Weekly just went out and I'm doing a free headshot, like professional headshot clinic. And the link is on the Senate Weekly. There's like 10 slots left and the Senate Weekly went out like 10 minutes ago. So if you want a slot, you better sign up quick.